Hey internets. So one of the stranger attacks out there against the idea of a more free society is the attack on the concept of free will itself. That people's choices are entirely a product of genetics plus environment, and the outcome of the universe was determined at the start, otherwise known as the deterministic argument against libertarian free will, based on Newtonian physics. This is sometimes also referred to as neural determinism, that the brain is just a biological computer and any thought it has is merely the result of processing environmental input. They then argue that people who repeatedly make bad decisions just can't help themselves, that they were predetermined to failure in life from the start, and therefore we should help them, specifically be forced to help them. Now, there are numerous problems with this argument, the first being that the free will debate from a scientific standpoint is not actually settled at all. There are a few schools of thought out there which suggest that depending on just how free will is defined, determinism doesn't really contradict it, such as soft determinism or compatibilism. There are also things like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle in quantum mechanics, which suggests that it's not really possible to know where a particle is with perfect accuracy, that there is therefore a limit to what can be predicted based on known information, suggesting that there is room for some form of free will that exists in this realm of the unknowable. Another argument for this is probably the godlike machine thought experiment. The determinist argument against free will suggests that if you know the position and velocity of every single particle in the universe, we could theoretically build a machine someday in the future that would use an extremely powerful AI to calculate exactly what would happen in the future, if the universe is indeed just a big clock. So if this machine could measure every aspect of a person's brain, it could then predict exactly what that person will do and every thought they will have for the rest of their life. But this creates a paradox. Let's say a mad scientist is determined to prove this machine wrong, so he shows the machine two fumos and asks it to show him which one he will choose to throw a water balloon at minutes from now. Of course, the twist is that this mad lad is planning to choose the opposite of what the machine tells him he will choose. This would create a logically impossible feedback loop. To stop him, the machine must somehow have to predict the opposite of his choice, which means he could then just go back to choosing the other fumo, and this would go back and forth the machine's calculations infinitely with no real way to complete. There's ultimately nothing the machine could do to accurately predict his choice and then stop him from picking the opposite, save for some rare external event such as a meteor strike being about to decimate him in 9 minutes, preventing him from making any decisions, which doesn't really count, since again, all this hypothetical machine can do is predict. Also assume the machine is not allowed to lie, so no, it can't just cheat by showing him the opposite of what it predicts. This suggests that either we do in fact have some kind of free will, or that the existence of such a perfect machine is in fact not theoretically possible and thus Heisenberg was right. Of course, you could bring up superdeterminism in response to that, but then you're starting to get into the realm of the unfalsifiable, and that can go on for ages. But honestly, the more interesting point is that whether free will exists or not, it actually doesn't matter to libertarian ethics. It is in fact completely irrelevant. To show this, let's just assume for the rest of this video that free will in fact does not exist, and then immediately dive into another thought experiment. Imagine Bob and Rob, both living on a farm. Bob is hardworking, intelligent, and thus works to ensure that the farm is sustainable. Rob is lazy, rude, has the IQ of a turnip, refuses to do any work, and demands that Bob feed him and take care of him. Should Bob be forced to take care of Rob just because Muh Free Will doesn't exist? After all, it's not Rob's fault that he is like this. Rob's ineptitude was predetermined from the start of the universe, so Bob should have to take care of his less capable brethren, right? Here's the problem. The argument against free will is usually made to discredit personal responsibility, but if Rob can't be responsible for his actions, then how can Bob be responsible for his? If Bob decides not to take care of Rob, isn't he also incapable of taking responsibility for his allegedly non-free choice as well? And this paradox doesn't go away when we scale it to society either. If we imagine 1,000,000 Robs and 1,000,000 Bobs, what's the difference? Does the collective somehow mysteriously form a free will that can then take responsibility out from the cosmic void pulled through the magical world of responsibility land? Obviously not. A solution to this ethical problem can be found in natural law. Most people, regardless of political alignment, can agree that we all own our own body. To suggest otherwise creates a logically absurd double standards and is basically slavery. For similar reasons, we all own what goes on inside our own head. This sets a simple rule. We are all responsible for our thoughts and actions we perform as a result of those thoughts. Regardless of whether the thoughts in our heads that lead to human action are a part of some esoteric free will, or if those thoughts are simply the mechanisms of a biological machine of physical determinism, it doesn't really matter. In other words, it makes the most sense for each person to be responsible for the thoughts in their own mind. While this may seem cruel to those who are less capable, the problem is that the alternatives are much worse. Again, to suggest otherwise would be to say that all the Bobs in society should be enslaved to all the Robs. Aside from the obvious injustice this creates, it's clearly not sustainable because you have a society that incentivizes victimhood. And to be honest, everyone kind of knows this. If someone were to break into your home and threaten the life of one of your family members, and you were in a position where you could save that family member's life, but at the cost of the life of that home intruder, would you either A, save your family, or B, take a moment to contemplate the poor situation this oppressed, downtrodden member of society who has broken into your home must have gone through? The poor guy, through no free will of his own, has been destined to invade other people's homes, and yeah, no, just about everyone is going to run with option A and waste that psycho. No one doesn't believe in responsibility during a home invasion. What all this means is that it's not the supposed lack of free will that disproves responsibility, but rather it is the existence of self-ownership and responsibility that disproves the relevance of free will. So whether we have free will, or if free will is just an illusion created by consciousness, in the grand scheme of things, it actually matters very little. This doesn't mean that we shouldn't care about improving our environment. We do know, at the very least, that people born into poverty have less options available to them in their lives, but that just blasts the discussion back to the economic argument of whether it is the free market policies that raise the average standard of living or socialist policies. A final issue to consider is that various studies have shown that disbelief in free will results in increased aggression and various forms of dishonest behavior. While these studies obviously don't prove whether or not free will exists, when it comes to a subject that, again, doesn't really matter that much in an ethical sense, and probably isn't even falsifiable, for much the same reason you can't really falsify the existence of whether or not we have a soul, at some point we have to ask ourselves, is Muh No Free Will really the hill you want to die on? Probably not. Anyways, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like, subscribe, and leave a tip and all that. Till next time.